Hey there class, and welcome to week 6 of Teaching Techniques for Healthcare Professionals. Let's jump right into the module. So this week we are going to talk about patient teaching, and this is probably one of the biggest areas that you're going to encounter in your careers. Unless you go directly into an academic setting and teach respiratory care students, you're most likely going to already have and will continue to teach patients in the healthcare setting, whether that be inpatient hospital or outpatient clinic type of setting. It's where we're going to see the vast majority of the people that we encounter in a teaching scenario. So we're going to talk about that this week in Module 6. So just to overview the week a little bit, we do have some discussion boards and then the final lesson plan, which we'll talk about. But one thing that, before we get to those things, let's talk about the teaching of patients. So it's really important that we understand that most of the time the inpatient setting in the hospital is not the ideal place to teach our patients. There's been a lot of research done that demonstrates that when patients are sick, they're not actually listening to us if we're giving them information about their disease state or how to care for themselves. They just don't feel good. If you ever think about a time in your student life when you were sick and you maybe struggled and you actually went to class, but you just felt like you didn't gain anything, you didn't learn anything from that, or maybe you were at home sick and so you tried studying and reading through the textbook chapters and you got to the end of it and you felt like you just wasted 3 hours because you didn't retain any of that information. And that's because you weren't feeling well, you weren't mentally prepared to learn in that academic setting. And the same thing happens with our patients when we try to teach them at the bedside. The last thing they're worried about is, how are they supposed to take their inhaler, or what are the types of foods that they should avoid, what are the allergy triggers that they should, try to avoid. So all of those different types of things come into play, and the result is the bedside's not a good place to teach or to learn. That being said, with today's healthcare economy, that's usually where we're given any opportunity, if at all, to actually teach. So it is something that we have to look at. We can't just completely write it off for those previously mentioned items. We actually have to put forth this effort because right now we're not seeing a whole lot of resources shifted into the outpatient setting where we would like to teach our patients from a pulmonary disease management aspect. So a lot of this we do end up doing at the bedside, so it's something we have to prepare for. So you can see here we've got a lot of information. There's a bunch of different PDFs already included here, as well as some information in the textbook that you're going to want to read in order to prepare yourself for the discussion boards this week, which is where we're going to talk about patient teaching and apply what we've learned. There's also a video listed here. Please watch that about teachable moments and patient education. And then optionally, there are lots of different episodes for patient education at this website where this video came from. So consider looking at a couple of different videos, especially at the different topics, because one of those topics might specifically pertain to an area that you are working in, and so you might find that a little bit more applicable than just the general video. So then I did mention the week 6 discussion board. There's 2 different prompts this week that you get to choose from. One is chronic disease management. Is it better to teach in a group setting or on a one-on-one basis? So based off the information that you've learned and then also your work experience, that can be one of your prompts, or you don't have to do both of these, so either one or the other. The second one would be, what's the difference between feedback and reflection? And then how do we use those in the clinical setting? So something that maybe you've used as a student in your associate degree program, if you did simulations or you did laboratory work, possibly there you had maybe some reviews, maybe some feedback, some debriefing types of things. So go ahead and discuss that and just a little bit more information to get you started with that. Can you identify some areas where you feel like you've employed this stuff? Remember, those are due, the first post is due Sunday night at midnight, and then you have 2 additional follow-up posts to your classmates or colleagues due by Tuesday. Of course, remember the APA citation and posting requirements. Okay, so then we get down to the final project lesson plan. This is going to be very similar to the lesson plan we did in week 2, with the exception that you're not being fed all of the information, the audience, the category, the topic that you have to choose from. So there's lots of good examples here. There's some guidelines. There's an actual example of what a final lesson plan would look like. There's a rubric. And then, of course, that narrowing your topic document, which you should have already done in week 5. With this lesson plan, it differs from week 2 in that you get to choose and it should be something that's relevant to your career field. So somewhere that you're already doing something in the clinical setting, maybe you're working with education, maybe you're on a special committee, or maybe you're just working with patients in general and you've got a specific interest in this particular topic. That's the type of topic you should be choosing. Something that you can actually then take this information that you've researched and apply it back into your clinical practice to some extent. The other option for a topic is to choose degree advancement and assume that you're going to then be teaching to a first semester respiratory student in an associate degree program, or possibly to a respiratory care department that has a large proportion of associate degree graduates, and you're going to be teaching them a course on why they should degree advance and then how they will actually degree advance. So something you have a lot of experience in now. Of course, you know why you wanted to degree advance and you know how to degree advance since you're currently doing it. So those are either 2 different main categories that you can choose from. You can see here you have an hour and 30 minutes to teach, so that's what you're going to base your lesson plan off of. But you are going to specify the audience. So this might be a respiratory care department of potential degree advancers, or this might be a first-year respiratory student course. Alternatively, this could be a group of patients that you are doing COPD management or asthma management to. I'm putting this on you. You've got to decide that. So you're going to have to figure out who am I actually going to be teaching to. An hour and 30 minutes, it seems like a really long time to teach, but it goes super fast, especially when you start building in refocusing moments, when you start having any amount of discussion. Time flies, and you might have a list of 10 bullet points that you think you want to cover, and at the end of an hour you're at bullet point number 3 simply because discussion has been great, there's been lots of questions, or you realize, wow, this is such a more deep topic and I've got so much more experience about this than I realized, that you continue to go deeper and deeper with this, and you realize, wow, I'm going to run out of time before I ever get to the end of this. That's probably the toughest part about my job when I lecture face to face. How do I not go over the amount of time that I've been allotted? In other words, how do I cram in all of this information into this short chunk of time that I've been allotted? Because at the beginning of the semester, I've got to take a 15-week course and every single week say, okay, on this day I'm going to teach this day this day this, and so on. And if I get off schedule, then that pushes everything back. That means I've got to try to catch up at some point. Otherwise, I'm not going to teach what I need to teach, and the students aren't going to be as prepared. I'm not covering the matrix information that COARC gives us for accreditation, and it just kind of steamrolls from there. The result of it is that those students graduate or leave that course not being fully prepared, not having all the information they need to be able to study for and pass the boards, and they could possibly go into their clinical courses without properly having all the information that they need. So it's really important that we don't go over just as much, if not more, that if we go under. Going under time, we can always try to throw something else in there and say, okay, let me talk about this experience, or let's ask questions. But if you go over, you just simply run out of time, and that becomes a problem. My point to that is, do not give yourself so many outcomes during this lesson plan that you would not be able to appropriately meet them in an hour and 30-minute course. You should probably have about 3 to 4, maybe 3 to 5 outcomes. Make sure they're good outcomes and make sure they're fairly specific. Again, we don't want to make this so huge that there's no way we can cover it. And then at that point, again, refocus materials. So you're going to kind of be pulling in aspects of the entire course that we've learned so far. You're going to talk about your course outcomes, Of course, we're going to lesson plan around that, but you're going to even use some of that information we used from our case study outline as you build your lesson plan. You'll see where that kind of links in and really works well together. The lesson plan is worth 100 points, so quite a bit more than most other assignments in the course so far. So there's a lot of weight that is on this project. Make sure you're looking through all of the material and the rubrics and the requirements as you go through this. That way, when you come to submit it, you make sure you've got everything buttoned up and nailed down. The lesson plan example is pretty lengthy, and it really goes into a lot of depth simply because the topic was oxygen administration. And this is just an example. It was taught to nursing students for about 2 hours. This is not the audience that you should be choosing. Now, you may, at some point in your role, be teaching nursing students, whether it's clinically or academically. I teach nursing students, PTA students, surg tech students all the time. So it's just a matter of where you actually are. But for our case, you know, whatever the audience that you think is appropriate, do that. So back to this example, it is quite long because oxygen administration is a huge topic. So I would recommend, if you're going to do something like oxygen administration, narrow that topic down to low flow devices or high flow devices, or something that brings that category down. Now, you should have already done that with your narrowing your topic worksheet, so that shouldn't be a problem at this point. That's the lesson plan. That is week 6 in a nutshell. Remember, you've got a discussion board, you've got those 2 categories or 2 topics to choose from, and then you're probably already started with your lesson plan. I know that you already have your topics picked out and you've already narrowed them down. But if you're watching this video prior to week 5, let's say you come here and you watch this early, I wanted to be able to give you guys a little bit more in-depth information on what it is that this final lesson plan is kind of looking like. But in general, it's not too much different than what we did in week 2. Okay, so then the last thing I want to leave you with is week 7 and what we're going to look forward to for next week, and that is the infographic. Remember, that's going out to PictoChart is the platform that we're going to be using for that. And you're going to then devise a visual for the topic that you've chose for this lesson plan here in week 6. I'll post a video about that in the week 7 module folder, so please do go ahead and check that out. But in the meantime, start thinking about that so that you can go out and actually see what PictoChart has to offer as far as infographics. And you can start thinking about how you're going to take your week 6 lesson plan topic and somehow move that into a visual graphic that's not too long, nice and condensed, for a audience that might just be walking past it in the hallway, look at it for 2 seconds and say, I know exactly what that means, and then move on. That's the whole point of that. And we'll talk more about that in week 7. All right, guys, this class is almost over. It's crazy to believe that we're here already, but the class is almost over. It's been a pleasure having you guys, and I hope you've been learning a lot from the course. I've learned a ton just from grading your guys' assignments, so I thank you guys for all of your hard work, and I will see you in week 7. Make it a great week.